Well, it's 10 o'clock. I guess we're about to start. So Jenny will be our fearless leader, our icebreaker. I'm going to mute.
Okay, Serge went away, and so I guess that's my cue to kick things off. Welcome. We are really excited that you're here joining us. As we were just saying, we were hoping to be able to gather together in person in Malta, but alas, the continuing pandemic has made that an unsafe proposition, but hopefully gathering online is proving both accessible and fun and a little easier for so many of you to join us from all over the world. We're just chuffed that so many people from all over the world are here with us today, and will spend the time thinking through some of these important questions this week. So Liz Cheney, Mr. Potato Head, Dr. Seuss, the author of Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling, Kanye West, conservative politician Marjorie Taylor Greene, actress Roseanne Barr, The Muppets, comedian Louis C.K., Chrissy Teigen, the novel and movie Gone with the Wind. What all of these things have in common is that they have allegedly been canceled. And so we can see just from this quick list that I gathered from an easy Google that cancel culture is a widespread phenomenon that spans the realms of entertainment, publishing, politics, popular culture, and it's a global phenomenon as well. Now, I won't claim to give a definitive definition of cancel culture just in my brief opening remarks this morning. And certainly I think we can all recognize the amorphous nature of this term. But just because the term has been sort of stretched, I think doesn't mean that we should dismiss it. Now, as someone who studies language and rhetoric, I want to point to the fact that even the term cancel culture is relatively loaded. And in fact, many people prefer accountability culture, and to some, to use cancel culture is already to assert its problematic nature in political and public discourse. But certainly, cancel culture is based in social media's power to reshape how we as humans navigate blame and accountability. Tracing the origins of cancel culture is tough, but many historians point to its use by marginalized communities to assert their values and speak back to powerful elites who allegedly commit wrongdoing with no consequences. And certainly it's driven by today's attention economy, whether or not groups are paying attention to celebrities and elites. It's not always clear whether cancel culture's goal is to redress a specific wrong or to speak to power relations in society more generally. But I do think that even, as we'll get into a little bit more tomorrow, that cancel culture bears some resemblances, at least, to past forms of social ostracism, whether we want to point to blacklisting communists, kangaroo courts or show trials in totalitarian regimes, and even excommunication from churches. Now, I suspect that I am, speaking of church, preaching to the choir here about the significance of cancel culture, since we have all gathered this weekend to talk about it and its relationship to character assassination more broadly. But I think the fact that it's a relatively misunderstood and not very well understood term means that we should investigate it more from both a scholarly and a practitioner perspective. Now, professors of linguistics have pointed to a phenomenon called semantic bleaching, the idea that this term has sort of been stretched in so many different ways that it's really tough to actually pin down its definition. And I think, as we'll see more tomorrow, it's hard to deny the partisan edge of cancel culture as well. In fact, we'll talk tomorrow about a recent report issued by the Pew Research Center that points to some key partisan breakdowns about cancel culture, whether it's a social media mob or whether it's actual accountability, whether engaging in politics on social media is even useful at all, and which of the values we want to promote, protecting free speech or and inclusion and making people feel comfortable. Whether those two things are actually at odds, I think is something we can talk about as well. But so our hope this weekend is to take a scholarly approach to this topic and to think about how it's impacting our politics and entertainment and our communication cultures more broadly. So I'll take this moment to introduce myself. I'm Jennifer Cohan. I teach in the Klein Family School of Communication at the University of Baltimore, and I have a PhD in rhetoric. So I'm interested specifically in how communication and how character attacks come to have persuasive value. And I'm interested specifically in character attacks facing women in politics. And so as we started thinking about cancel culture for this conference, certainly a lot of important overlaps there. I want to talk to you a little bit about what CARP is, since I know that many of you are joining us for the first time, although it's great to see members of our broader network here as well. Then I'll give the CARP team a chance to introduce themselves as well and tell you a little bit more about what we're going to do with our time together this morning. So our research lab, Character Assassination and Reputation Politics, or CARP, was co-founded by 4 scholars from different disciplines, including psychology, history, and communication and rhetoric. We have a loose academic home at George Mason University and want to, as always, thank them for their support in helping us put this conference on and in all of the financial and social and scholarly support they've given us over the years, although we are also based at a few different universities. But more broadly, CARP is a network of scholars interested in understanding the phenomenon of character assassination. So we publish scholarship, we host conferences, we try to educate the public, and we're especially interested as well in mitigation strategies and how it is that we might come to help people defend themselves. We certainly value our broader coalition and network, of which you are now all a part. And so this is actually our 3rd biennial international conference. And it's the first time we're doing this virtually, which unlocks some possibilities and opportunities. So thank you for joining this experiment with us. I want to actually turn it over to the rest of the CARP team and give them a chance to introduce themselves. And then I'm going to ask to hear from all of you, so don't get too comfortable hiding behind your black boxes. But first of all, let me hand it over to Sergey, who has been wonderful about communicating with all of you via email as we organize this conference.
Thank you, Jennifer. My name is Sergey Samoilenko, and I work in the Department of Communication at George Mason University. So my research area represents public relations, crisis communication. I'm interested in public character as a social phenomenon. I'm interested in to see how reputation can be easily shaped or destroyed in a fateful moments. And when I first heard about Martin and Eric's book, and I will hand the word to them in a few minutes, I was really fascinated about this opportunity, and I was trying to see how communication could be used there as a discipline that will help explain how it works, how it's performed, and basically how it's used for constructing new realities and identities. So I think we need to, I would like Martin and Eric maybe tell us a little bit of prehistory. So we refer to them as our founding fathers of CARP, because it was their idea that initially developed into what we see as the Research Lab for Character Assassination and Reputation Politics. Martin?
I thought the founding fathers were cancelled as well, but nevertheless, thanks very much, Serge. So yeah, my name is Martijn X, and as you can perhaps guess from my name, I am from the Netherlands, currently based at the University of Amsterdam. I guess you could say I am the CARP team's resident historian, specializing in the history of the Roman Empire. So I came to this topic through my interest in what we sometimes call bad emperors. Rome has had a lot of notorious emperors. I wrote my PhD on one of them, and that got me intrigued in the question, why were these emperors portrayed in such bad terms? What mechanism is behind it? What's going on? Whose agenda does it serve to cast them in such a negative light? And that is what first got me interested in the topic of character assassination, because quite apart from how good or bad these emperors actually were, I think you can definitely see that posthumously their reputations were cast in a very deliberately negative light. So they were, in a sense, character assassinated. And that caused me to team up with Eric Sharayev, who will talk to you in a minute. And together we organized a conference in 2011 in Heidelberg about character assassination as an historical phenomenon. And that led to the book Character Assassination Throughout the Ages, a conference volume where our contributors talked about different time periods, ranging from the ancient world to the medieval world to the American Revolution to the 20th century, and talked about character assassination as an historical phenomenon in all of these different contexts. So I'll pass on to Eric now, who can explain a bit further about that.
Thank you. I am Eric Sharayev. Thank you. Thank you, Martin. I am a recovering psychologist. I got my basic training in psychology, and then I was trained in the fields of political psychology at UCLA. And since then, by default, I teach political science classes and psychology. I definitely pretend that I know something in political science, and my fellow psychologists like it. And I pretend I know something about psychology. My political scientists, my other fellows, just on the other side, also like it. Well, anyway, Martin just contacted me just years ago after my brief presentation in Paris about character assassination. And so I didn't know Martin, but I know for the fact that he had a lot of funding for his research then Heidelberg. And therefore, he was able to organize a conference. And so, speaking about funding, tell you that CARP is also a nonprofit, has a nonprofit branch, which specifically designed us to work on social sphere, to help the community and help in our volunteer work, provide counseling, provides advice, and help disseminate knowledge all over the world. Character assassination is a subject which is unusual, and many people told us that they were surprised to see that it could be a field of academic investigation and studies and applications. But then more and more over several years, we received numerous suggestions and support from other people, and we believe that this is the right course, and we need your support, we need your cooperation. And the things that we say today and things that we promote today are not necessarily about the promotion, are basically just a call for cooperation and future research, and also, and most importantly, applications. We need to help people, we need to understand how to help people, and we need to take those practical steps forward. That's my brief presentation, more to follow.
Excellent. Thank you. Hard to believe that sort of the real start of this was 10 years ago in 2011. So I want to tell you a little bit just about what we hope to accomplish with this morning session. So after you all introduce yourselves, we're going to give you a brief progress report on some of the things that CARP Lab has been up to over the past 2 years since we gathered in Fairfax at George Mason University. We're going to talk to you a little bit about a new textbook that we have just published, and our hope that learning about some of the resources that we have gathered as a result of putting that book together can be helpful to you, both in your research and your scholarship. Thank you, Martin, for the holding up the book. And then we're going to transition into some framing questions that we have identified as things we want to wrestle with over the course of this weekend, in the hopes that you too will provide some things that you're interested in talking about as well. For those of you that are active on social media, just wanted to let you all know that that we will be tweeting at our, oh my goodness, talking about social media. Clearly I am an old, but so we'll be tweeting this weekend, and please feel free to tweet at us at CARP_lab with things that you're learning, insights you're coming up with, things you're thinking about, and we would love to have the conversation on social media as well. So as I mentioned, the next thing I want to do is get to know who you all are. And so this doesn't need to be scary, but since we are going to be spending time in a Zoom space together for the next weekend, it would be for the next couple days, I should say, it would be great to get to know a little bit more about who you are. So here's what I would like to know. Who are you? What is your institution, whether it's academic or not? Where in the world are you today? And are there motivating questions or things you want to learn about social media, about character assassination and cancel culture this weekend? We invite you to turn your cameras on when you're introducing yourself, but just like I say with my students, no pressure. I know we're all in sort of different spaces with different internet capabilities. And I apologize when I teach classes. I really hate cold calling, but I think that kind of going down the list of participants here on the side of my screen is probably going to be the easiest way to do this. So when I call on you, if you wouldn't mind unmuting yourself and introducing yourself. Let's go ahead and get started. And I don't want to forget our wonderful CARP interns who are helping here this morning. So the first person I'm going to ask to introduce themselves is Aria.
Thank you, Dr. Cohan. Hi, everybody. My name is Aria. I'm one of your co-hosts for this morning and for the rest of this weekend. I'm a former alumnus of George Mason University. I was a former student of Dr. Shariv, who amazingly talked to me about this great institute called CARP. And right now, I'm also serving as one of their interns, but also I am the current CEO of my own company called Tutor Dudes. I have extensive administrative and executive background that I definitely would hope to bring to this organization and to obviously help the interns obviously excel in their roles at CARP here. And I'm also excited to learn about the many things of character assassination, obviously how cancel culture affects obviously our generation and obviously what we can learn. So again, I can help better disseminate between what's out in the media and obviously what's fact and fiction. So thanks to meet everyone. All right.
Thanks, Aria. He's our tech genius, helps us with all of the behind the scenes stuff. Next, I'm going to call on Miriam.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mariam. I am also a former student of Dr. Shariv's. I'm currently a second-year student at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. So hello from North Carolina. I'm a political science student with a minor in women and gender studies and Islamic and Middle Eastern history and just general studies as well. I'm really excited to be here. I currently do the CARP_lab Twitter. So please be tweeting at us throughout this weekend. And I will also be one of the co-hosts this weekend. So you will be seeing a lot more of me. And I am also very excited to, just be here virtually, of course.
Thank you so much, Miriam, and thanks for all you've done to help us put this together. I'm going to say, as well as I continue calling on people, sincere apologies. I'm going to try my best with name pronunciation, but please correct me so that we have the right pronunciation for our record and moving forward. This one seems really hard. The next person on my list is Rod.
Hey, Rod Carveth, to get the pronunciation right. Until about a month ago, I was at Morgan State University. I'm now teaching in the Department of English at Central Connecticut State University in New Britain. And I'm presently in my apartment in New Britain, Connecticut. So as far as what I research the use of apology in crisis. One of the things I'm kind of interested in, even though it's not being directly addressed this weekend is, when you're looking at the phenomenon of cancel culture, I think one of the variables that's important is the degree to which shame plays a role, and whether or not we've got a country in which there are people that just they have no shame at all. And so, cancel culture works really well if you have the ability to be able to be shamed, but there are people that don't. And how does that end up playing a role? And so I'm kind of interested in playing around with that.
Love it. And certainly rhetorical scholars have thought a lot about shame and blame and praise as dynamics of communication. Welcome.
And there's a lot of interesting social psychological research that's emerging in the last 10 years on that too. So.
Excellent. Well, we're excited to have you with us. Rod has joined us on many of our other conferences as well. All right, next on my list is April.
Yeah, hi there. Yeah, I'm April Harding. I'm an economist, retired a couple of years ago, and but sort of with a background focusing on sort of social systems analysis and comparison. And since I retired, I became very interested in, well, actually in cancel culture, and started sort of looking into, so I sort of created a database of, for example, like all the cancellation attacks that I could find in sort of US academia starting in the late 60s. And what I was trying to do was sort of come up with a framework for doing meaningful comparisons, right? It's not so obvious, right? I mean, you could, try to compare, like, is it different in Canadian academia from the United States, or was it different in the 60s than it was in the 70s? So I've been doing that, and then also trying to use some sort of comparative frames, like historical frames, right? So sort of to compare how those tools were used, for example, by the Bolsheviks in the 1920s and 30s, in the early Soviet Union. So I'm interested in how do you get a group of people who haven't been doing cancellations to take up the habit, and because it's a participatory thing, right? So if I condemn someone and no one around sort of jumps on board and thinks that's a legitimate sort of criticism, then you don't really get very far. So I'm sort of interested in the sort of social dynamics there. And so anyway, couldn't be more thrilled about the topic of this meeting. So very nice to meet you all.
Welcome, April. And I think your point about thinking about cancel culture as participatory is really important and will animate a lot of conversations we have this weekend. All right, next up, Athena. I see that you're not muted, but we cannot hear you.
If people have some sound issues, maybe they can just type in the chat.
Yeah. I'm not sure why we can't hear you, but go ahead and type into the chat who you are, and I'll call on Carlo next.
Hi everybody. And thank you for the invitation. So my name is Carlo Berti, and I'm here with Enzo Lohner, who I guess we'll talk later. And I'm a postdoctoral researcher from the School of International Studies, at the University of Trento in Italy. So broadly, we are working on a larger project. Actually, our focus is populism in the European Union and its impact on the European institutions. But as probably many of you know, we have some funny politicians in Italy. And most recently with Enzo, we have been working on Matteo Salvini, and we have used character assassination to investigate his social media communication strategy. So this is what we are going to present tomorrow.
Awesome. Welcome, Carlo. Let's hear from Enzo next, actually.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Enzo Lohner, and I have a PhD in sociology and social research. I'm based and I work for a small university of northern Italy. The university is the same where Carlo Berti is doing his postdoc now, and I live in our region, in the mountains of northern Italy. For my university and also for other university, I teach mainly quantitative methods of analysis, but I think that I am very curious and I also like qualitative methods. So I often like to mix both the two methods, especially with Carlo and with other researchers. So my topics, the themes that I like to study are mostly in the field of political sociology. And that was the way why we, when we found the character assassination theory, and I think that it was very, very good. It fitted well, as told before Carlo, what we have found. So we found this theory very, very well, and we used it to explain what we found. So that's all.
Awesome. Thank you, Enzo. And thanks to Athena for putting an intro in the chat for us. Next, I'm going to call on Harris. Maybe. All right, we can come back to them. Next on my list is Inna.
Hello, I'm sorry I will be without video. I'm in London, so greetings from the other side of the ocean. It's afternoon and I'm outside. My name is Inna Sudorova. I'm from Russia. I hold a degree in journalism and now I'm in the process of getting master's in digital media. My interest is in the way artificial intelligence interacts with our culture, interfere in our culture, and the dangers of artificial intelligence. And the deepfake is one of the products of artificial intelligence, and I will speak about it tomorrow.
Awesome. Welcome, Inna. Certainly the technological aspects, including AI, are an important part of kind of what's driving some of these changes. I want to give a welcome shout out to Josh Compton, who's been with us before, but he gave an introduction in the chat that you can read. So welcome, Josh. We're excited you are here. Next on my list is Kawalpreet.
Hi, good evening, because it's good evening out here in India. I am associate professor in a college in Chandigarh, the first planned city of India in North India, and it's Chandigarh. I teach in DAV College, which is a postgraduate college, and we are affiliated to Punjab University, Chandigarh, which is one of the oldest universities in India. And I came upon your character assassination just by chance, thanks to the internet. And then Jennifer and Serge were very, very helpful. In fact, Serge is pushing me very hard to come up with something very substantial. And yes, kudos to you people. I could make it last time to America, because the minute the visa people heard George Mason's University, there were 3 lecturers who were denied visa, but the minute they heard your name, they asked me to fly, and I was there with you people. And research is pretty tough because we are teaching undergraduate classes, and unlike abroad, university education is pretty affordable in India. So we have about 80 students per class. So I meet about 240 students per day. So it's a lot of work, but enjoy teaching it. And I'm teaching all the undergraduate classes, and 2 or 3 of my students, I am preparing them to join you people because they want to fly abroad, and they want to, I'm telling them to go in for something new. So most probably, I'm pushing them towards it. And thank you so much for having me here. And thanks to Serge and Jennifer and all the founding members of the club for pushing me. I still feel I am an outsider. I'm learning. As I'm going with you, I'm learning a lot. But yes, your theme has made me look at the newspaper in a completely different angle. Every morning I get up and see what is character assassination today. So you making me see India through very different eyes. And believe me, every day I get a lot of spices. In India, we call it masala, right? So get a lot of spices, which I'm sure I'll share with you during my presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, next up is Michael.
Good morning. Michael Dudley from, I'm an academic librarian at the University of Winnipeg. I have master's degrees in library science and in city planning. And actually in my planning degree, we studied Chandragar. So it's very interesting to hear about where you are. Kaloprit. I've long been interested in how knowledge organization systems in library science in particular, but now also just on the internet in general and algorithms, shape discourses, shape knowledge in terms of what's considered acceptable knowledge and what isn't, what ends up getting marginalized and excluded based on these forces. And so I'll be speaking to that tomorrow, but in general, I'm really looking forward to hearing from all of you about the different cases, different theoretical perspectives on cancel culture, because I've also been, getting increasingly dismayed and disturbed at the state of our politics and how people are losing their careers over saying things that 10 years ago would have been considered completely, common sense and not controversial at all. And what's misshaping our politics to such a degree that certain things can no longer be said. So looking forward very much to the next few days. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. I think your point that broader knowledge systems and sort of these big structures are important here too is going to be a significant factor for us to consider as we keep talking about this. Next up, Perry. All right, so we shall come back to her if she is by her computer. Petros?
Hello. Hello from me. Sorry for the camera. I'm having some small trouble with the camera here. It's integrated. Hello from UAE. I'm teaching Homeland Security, and at the same time, I'm doing some research on policy making. This is the theme of my PhD, along with public diplomacy and public, a lot of stuff that affect the public opinion. And I found out about you, thanks Professor Samaras from Piraeus University, which I'm very thankful for this. And I'm trying to catch up. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. Rafaela.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. I'm Rafaela. I'm from Brazil, and I'm currently a master's student at Unicinos. And I actually started my study in cancel culture last year because I graduated last year in digital communication. So this was my final project. But then I was trying to understand the conceptual meaning behind cancel culture, because it's actually and it's not a new thing, but when it went virtually, it's a new thing because it has other ways to be disseminated. And also what I could understand is that cancel culture could be different depending on the country, because here in Brazil, it might be different from America, then it might be different from, I don't know, India. I don't even know if it's the same term. This is something that I was noticing. And then I decided to do my master's. So I got a scholarship and I started this year. So I'm currently doing my project, which will be also about cancel culture, but I will try to go to another angle, trying to understand how it affects people when it comes to silence them. It makes people afraid of sharing things online. But what I studied and I will bring here is the controversies about cancel culture. And yeah, that's basically it. And I'm so excited to hear all your projects and work, because it will also help me to try to find a way. I don't know, because I see we have a lot of subjects here, which is so cool to see it in many angles. Thank you.
Awesome. Welcome, Rafaela. Tyler.
Hey, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. My name is Tyler Johnson. I am an associate professor of political science at the University of Oklahoma. My research is generally looks at information effects on public opinion, and primarily from a survey experimental approach. So you'll get a flavor for that on Sunday when I look at the types of arguments that convince people that we should be removing Confederate memorials from public spaces. I came to CARP sort of haphazardly. I don't quite know how I got on the list in 2017 to attend the conference, but I did, and I went, and I was happy to do it. And I found a bunch of different ways to sort of incorporate the character assassination approach and the literature a bunch of you guys have been working on into some recent publications. One as part of the edited volume that Sergey and others put together recently. And also I have a forthcoming piece in Journal of Political Marketing on the attempts to label President Joe Biden as Sleepy Joe. So there's a nice character assassination flavor to that research. So I'm looking forward to seeing what everyone has to present as I sort of pop in and out of this conference this weekend. So good to see everyone.
Thanks for joining us again, Tyler. I'm going to put Tony on the spot, even though they joined late, if you're here. Oh. No, just disappeared. All right. How about, let's see, Atanasios Samaras? I know I said that wrong. I'm sorry.
No, you said it perfect. I thought only Spaniards can pronounce my name correctly, but Greeks. Well, I'm an assistant professor of international and political communication at the University of Piraeus. Athina Limniouzi is my PhD candidate. Tony Astriadis has been my PhD candidate. I have attended the first two conferences of CARP. My field is, I have done my PhD in political communication. Prior to entering the university, I have 15 years of campaigning that is avid experience in character assassination at different levels. We have contributed 2 pieces in the last, in the handbook, one on character refutation assassination at the state level, state assassination, and one of exploration of ad hominem as a tool of character assassination. With Athina, we are going to present an old style cancel culture effect. That is the way that the Greek Communist Party canceled Costco because they objected to Costco buying a large stake in the port of Piraeus. So we have a very strong attack upon Costco and upon China. So we have a communist party attacking a communist country for capitalist practices. And it's a quite assimilation of character assassination and cancel culture.
Welcome. We're excited to have you with us again. A couple more. We're almost done here. Robert.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to introduce myself. Sorry that I'm not on camera today, and actually I'll be going in and out of this conference, but I am very interested. I actually operate a public relations search firm in the DC market and service clients globally. This is a very important topic to them, and I'm a student of PR. I've been a practitioner also for more than 3 decades. So this is a very interesting and important topic to me. And I really feel privileged that Sergey invited me to participate and be aware of it. And I'm happy to listen to what you guys are talking about this weekend. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. It's always good to have multiple perspectives. So there's a name in Russian that I heard Sergey call Ilya. So I'm going to assume that that is your correct name, but please feel free to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Jennifer. If you can hear me correctly, because I'm on mobile, so it's not Wi-Fi, it's like 4G. So I am Ilya, my family name is Viko. I'm from St. Petersburg, Russia. And St. Petersburg is a very beautiful city. And it's evening and not today. So I work at the Department of Journalism and mass media communication. I don't know how to correctly put it. At St. Petersburg State University, and I'm a political scientist, and my main topic of my research is about social media and politics. And actually, I got to this conference and interested in this topic following our two research in communicative aggression, verbal aggression, and so on. And the second topic was about echo chambers in social media of Russia. And recently there were several cases which could be, address like cancel culture, sort of. So I will talk about this tomorrow, and hopefully we will find some answers to my questions why it's not so popular in Russia. I'm very glad to be here and to participate in this conference. Thank you.
Thanks, Ilya. All right, Florian has joined us.
Yes, I do. It's nice, and I love it so much to see some familiar faces again right now. I met in Washington and Vienna, before Corona hit us right in the middle of our brains, whatever. My name is Florian. I'm an ancient historian like Martin or some other speakers I will surely meet during the next days. And my field of expertise is the study of memorial culture in antiquity, especially in Roman times. How to forget people, how to obliterate them, how to get them out of the daily talk. And I'd like to tell some details on a very special case on Sunday afternoon, and I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Welcome, Florian. We're excited to see you again. So I know some people have been popping in and out. So before I hand it over to Sergey and Martin, I want to just pause here and say if there's anyone that I missed that would like to pop on and introduce themselves quickly, now's your chance. All right, please feel free to, if you didn't get the chance to introduce yourself, to type into the chat who you are and some of the questions and research that you've been doing on character assassination and cancel culture. I'm going to turn things over to Sergey and Martin, who's going to tell us a little bit about what CARP has been up to over the past 2 years. And as Sergey mentioned in the chat, please feel free to update us on what you've been working on in relation to character assassination and cancel culture by dropping some links to your research in the chat so we can get those circulated and compile them to circulate among participants at the end of our conference. So I'm going to mute myself and turn it over to them.
Thank you, Jennifer. We'll try to share my screen. Can you see it now? Okay.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, wonderful.
You might want to, oh, sorry. Nope, you're
yeah,
good.
Go ahead.
You're good.
Okay, so when we started this journey, like 4 of us in 2016, I guess, preparing for the first conference, we were trying to figure out how do we actually conceptualize character assassination, and how do we introduce ourselves to people, and what do we say when people ask us why someone needs to study and teach courses on character assassination research. And it's been always hard because, in a sense, it is sound kind of toxic in a way. And I had colleagues asking me, why would anyone teach a course on character assassination, and why would you tell your students about that? And I guess my response was always that we are trying to invite people on a journey to explore how something like this that is been historically always been present there, something that is such a sociocultural phenomenon, can be understood, because it happens, people see it, but nobody wants to talk about that. And because it's toxic, nobody really wants to kind of to be accused of guilt by association. And typically, I mean, you study in character assassination, so you must be doing that as well. So our response was, well, we're not doing that. We're not teaching how to do it. However, we're trying to help people recognize some of those patterns. We try to help scholars figure out different approaches, how to study it, and we'll look at cases of the past to come up with some patterns to see whether we can learn from the past and basically predict the future. And that's been our, in a way, focus of academic inquiry. But as Jennifer has pointed out, we've been trying to build a really solid and really quality academic community around us, which is very multidisciplinary, and we all have different foci there, because in a sense, it's really important to see how a political psychologist can work with ancient historian and then person specializing in artificial intelligence, for example, to make sense of what's going on with this phenomenon called cancel culture. So in a sense, I will try to take a look at what we have done since 2019, when we had our last conference, which was on character assassination and populism. So, so we tried to actively occupy social media and, in a sense, promote the word about CARP research. So 2 years ago, we launched our YouTube channel and been holding webinars. In 2020, especially, we held several webinars with multiple scholars and practitioners studying different parts of character assassination research. We had political psychologists teaching us about profiling. We had media people taking a look at views of satire in the media and trying to make sense why some comedians use character attacks as a way to talk about policy or politics. We talked to crisis professionals like Eric Desenhol, who are teaching us how to defend from character attacks, and when do you go purely communication route, or you take a legal route, and how to reconcile both approaches. We talked to ancient historians about lessons of the past, about fallen statues and erased artifacts. We discussed multiple topics, right? So I highly encourage you to visit our YouTube channel and spread the word, because we'll continue working on building a nice library there. So as a follow-up, basically, we, in order to reach out to other audiences, including younger people, we started a podcast channel, and that idea actually came from my students who are really interested in podcasting right now. So what we've been trying to do, especially last year, we first of all were uploading some of the older webinars, but also trying to record some new shows. So by the way, our podcast is available on major platforms, including Spotify and iTunes. So one of the recent episodes was with Sarah Isger, former Justice Department spokeswoman and legal podcaster, who was talking about character attacks in today's American politics, and especially how character assassination as a social phenomenon proliferated under Trump administration. That was a very interesting podcast, so I encourage you to listen to our new podcast initiative. So it's something new that we're trying to do in order to spread the word about our scholarship. Well, about 4 years ago, in a way, when after we first had our first conference in 2017, well, we decided to kind of not to do conference proceedings, but go directly into handbook, because handbook is important when you try to not just establish a name, but also try to reach out to theorists and conceptual thinkers, people who will help you better understand deep concepts such as character assassination. So we decided to build this multidisciplinary kind of project. And in 2020, which is last year, the Routledge of Handbook of Character Assassination Reputation Management was published. So that was a very interesting project to me personally, because in a way, it was really hard to reconcile different scholars with different views and different approaches. So in a way, we kind of were trying to focus on theory, practice, cases of the past and cases of the future, and reconcile and kind of build a lot of teachable moments. So based on and key takeaways from this book. So for example, in the first part, we have several chapters talking about how to understand character assassination from the psychological perspective, from the structural perspective. We have a wonderful chapter about inoculation theory by Josh Compton. In the second part, we were focusing on national and international dynamics of character assassination. So we looked at the past, we looked at Dutch Revolution, for example. We looked at character assassination in Soviet Union and Russia. We looked at character assassination in Egypt and in China. And so in a way, we were trying to kind of compare and contrast and come up with some, again, similar patterns, but at the same time looking at some cross-cultural specifics of character assassination as a phenomenon. In the third part, we looked at individual collective targets, and probably you already know why we're not using the word victim when we talk about somebody who's been, target of character assassination, because we think so the victim is a social construct, and therefore it makes more sense to talk about targets per se when we discuss some of the functional attacks. So it has several really interesting chapters, including those on argumentum ad hominem, chapters from our Greek colleagues, a wonderful chapter by Tim Coombs on corporate character assassination. And obviously that brought us to the discussion of different strategies, because we really wanted to see how character assassination is being exercised and who are the people behind character assassination campaigns. Those who are trying to strategize and plan and design some of those most intricate attacks directed at politicians and celebrities. So part 4 really talked a lot about kind of different historical figures. So Jennifer, for example, has a chapter here about character assassination in the age of McCarthy. Then we have Will Benoit, who is a scholar of image restoration and image repair, talking about character assassination on CBS Face of Nation. We have a chapter about the application of ad Hitlerum as a new frame for political and geopolitical conflicts. And finally, in the last chapter, we were trying to make sense of what's happening now, especially in the age of social media. And we have several chapters, in fact, focusing on social media character assassination attacks. So, for example, we talked about character assassination as scapegoating. There was a chapter discussing memes as weaponized tactics of character assassination. There is a chapter about social media and the regulation of morality, talking about moral crusaders. So in other words, so we spent almost 3 years writing this handbook, but I think it was a really, really good and fruitful effort for which we're very proud about. So it's now available in a paperback. So it's much more at a reduced price, much more available to people. So if you haven't seen this handbook, I will encourage you to go ahead and check this out. So, and the follow-up project, which we spent the entire COVID year last year, was this character assassination and reputation management theory and applications. And that was designed originally as a textbook, because here at Mason, we have a course which is cross-listed with government. It's a course in communication looking at character assassination campaigns and discussing ways how to manage your reputation when those attacks happen. And that was a course that was originally designed by me and Eric, and we taught this for the last 4 years, but we never had a textbook. So I used, different articles, different papers, occasional case studies, but we never had an organized, systematic approach how to teach a course on character assassination and reputation management. And last year, so we had plenty of time, obviously because of COVID. So we spent a lot of time writing about different cases, trying to make sense of most vicious attacks. We were trying to make sense of a lot of different applications. And if you take a look at the table of contents here, you will see that we try to really, really make a very comprehensive textbook written in a, I wouldn't say conversational, but very accessible and a very digestible way. So undergrads can easily relate to our heavy concepts and can understand what we're talking about. So I guess Eric will speak more about this textbook when he will present his database, and he'll talk about actual syllabus, because we also developed the syllabus going together with this textbook, and our participants will be able to get a copy at the end of this conference. So also we were trying to help people find a way how to publish their ongoing research, and that's why we have such a vibrant academic community here. So one of the efforts was the special issue of Journal of Applied Social Theory, led by me, and it has several articles about character assassination research now. It was published in March this year. It's an open access. So if you go online and you type Journal of Applied Social Theory Character Assassination, so you can download all of the articles in real time. And this is effort I'm really proud of myself. So at the same time, my colleagues in rhetoric, political science, and history were doing similar things. And Martin will discuss what he has done in terms of organizing different activities and publishing different papers and attending different conferences. Thank you so much. So Martin, will you be able to share your screen?
Yeah, thank you, Serge. I'll take it from here, and Let's see if I can share my screen. Yeah, here we go. So there's basically two things I would like to briefly update you about, and it certainly wasn't just me involved in this, but many other people as well. The first thing was the Vienna conference that took place in 2020, and someone wrote in the chat already that seems like ages ago, because that was February 2020, so it was just before the Western world got hit by the COVID pandemic. I think it was the last trip I made before we all had to stay at home and went in lockdown. So that alone already made it a very special time in hindsight. So it was hosted by Nadja Gernalczyk at the University of Vienna and co-organized by our own Eric Sharayev, Jennifer Cohan, Edwina Hagen, who is not here at the moment, and myself. And as the title implies, autobiography and reputation politics, we wanted to combine these two fields. So Nadja had long been working in the field of biography and autobiography. It's a very ancient genre. It's literally ancient in that, of course, biographies were already written in ancient times. Think of St. Augustine, for instance, who famously wrote about his own experiences. And biography is a genre that has always been with us. And nowadays it can take the form of blogs, vlogs, documentaries, and all sorts of modern media. But throughout time, people have always talked about themselves or have been the subject of biographies by other people. And a lot of research has gone into that. People have looked at the narratological aspects of it. They've looked at the historical aspects of it, the psychological aspects, etc., etc. But what we were interested in is how reputations are negotiated in works of biography. Because in a biography, if it's an autobiography, you're also presenting yourself in a certain way. And of course, you will presumably try to cast yourself in a positive light. Think of politicians writing their memoirs, explaining why they did what they did and why they were right all along and why their critics were wrong. But also think of people writing biographies of other people, which might not always be so positive. And in fact, the other people featuring in these works are also depicted in a certain way, either positively or negatively. And rather than just thinking about this in terms of, is this fact or fiction, and how reliable is a certain biographical work, we can also ask questions about what we call reputation politics or reputation management. And as you know, the second part of the CARP acronym is character assassination and reputation politics. So this negotiation of reputations is something that we're very interested in, and something that Nadja, from her perspective as a biography expert, was also interested in. So we combined forces and had a two-day conference in Vienna, which, like this event here, was very interdisciplinary. We had people from many different fields, many different countries, speaking about things like feminist discourse, the Trump presidency, the ancient author Flavius Josephus, I think, Florian, you talked about at that conference. So lots and lots of different topics. And we're currently working on a conference volume with the same title, Addressing Autobiography and Reputation Politics. There is a link, which I will later also put in the chat, if anyone would like to have a look at the website, where you can still see the conference program, the speakers and the topics, and a sort of general explanation of what that conference was about. So the second project I want to introduce to you briefly, and I'll hold it up here, is at Tijdschrift voor Geschiedenis, or in plain English, the Journal for History, which is a Dutch historical journal where my esteemed colleague Edwina Hagen and myself managed to get a thematic issue published on character assassination just recently, like it came out a few weeks ago, actually. And you could see this in a sense as a follow-up of that very first conference Eric and I did in 2011, where Edwina, by the way, was also present. So she's certainly been with us for a long time. And we talked about character assassination as an historical phenomenon, because we ask all sorts of questions from a rhetorical perspective, from a political, from a psychological perspective, from a communications perspective. But there are also some issues that are particular to historical research into character assassination. That comes with its own challenges and its own benefits as well, I think. And that's in particular what Edwina and I wanted to address in this volume, or in this journal. So we had a small colloquium in Amsterdam in 2019 on the topic of character assassination and media. Media are, of course, always necessary to communicate messages of character assassination, but media are also something that is very much dependent on the historical context. Nowadays, we use tweets, we use videos, we use YouTube ads, but back in the day, people had to use pamphlets, or they used other media, and even further back before the printing press, they could only make speeches and had a quite limited range of media available to them to try and commit character assassination. So how is character assassination as an historical phenomenon dependent on media throughout time? How does that dynamic change from the ancient and medieval world to the early modern world of the printing press, and then to the modern world with its democracies, its computers, its social media, etc. It is an open access journal. It is, of course, in Dutch, so most of you presumably will not be able to read it, but we do have one English article as well by Eric Sharayev that you can all read. And just to give you a brief impression, I haven't listed the entire table of contents, but a few of the topics that come up is, well, there's an introduction. Character assassination is a timeless weapon, where Edwina and I argue that even though the term character assassination is, of course, a very modern one, and in a sense, an anachronism, that the phenomenon of trying to attack people's image and people's reputation goes back a long way and can actually be traced in many historical cultures as well. Henri van Nispen, who will join us later and will give a talk here as well, wrote an article titled "Black Ink, the Character Assassination of Gaius Caligula, the infamous Roman emperor." I'm not going to say too much about that now, because that will be actually his topic on Sunday, I believe. So he'll tell you all about that. Bart van Hees wrote a bit about Carolingian historiography. So then we're in the early medieval period. One of the sons of Charlemagne, who conspired against him, was then character assassinated by medieval monks and chroniclers in their writings, in an article called "From Prince the Black Sheep and Back," because he got later, he got rehabilitated again. And of course, I need to mention Eric's article as well, "Fake News for the American Revolution, an attempt at character assassination of George Washington," which is the one article actually in English in this volume. So what we try to do is try and tackle historical questions, historical challenges. How can the general theoretical framework that we've developed for character assassination be applied to historical contexts, which are often quite different from what we are dealing with today? We don't have all these nice surveys and opinion polls, for instance. So it's one challenge is that it's very hard to say how effective character attacks were in the past. We have all sorts of source problems that we have to deal with. And in this journal, we try to show how you could do that and how you could learn something from looking at these different historical periods and seeing what sort of parallels emerge from that. Okay, so that's all I wanted to share with you right now. Serge, I think we're now going to have a very brief break before we turn to Eric's presentation.
Yes, but I see more people joining us today, and I just noticed Andre Haller from Germany joining us. So we
Andre.
Andre, hello. We
Hello,
also
hi.
would like to give the floor to our colleagues to do extraordinary projects And Andre Haller represents a conference which already had 3 sessions. And they're planning the 4th conference next year. It's a conference on scandology, and he represents an academic society of scandologists. So Andre, would you like to say a few words about what you do and your partnership with CARP?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Sergey. Hello, I'm Andre from Germany, but I'm working in Austria at the University of Applied Sciences in Kufstein, which is near the Bavarian and German border. My colleague and I, Hendrik Michael, and I had the idea in 2016 to start a conference at University of Bamberg in Germany on scandals, especially the relationship between scandals and communication media. So we started in 2016. It was a huge success, I think. Lots of media coverage also, because it's kind of an interesting topic for journalists. And we decided to plan another conference, the 2nd conference in scandology in 2018 and in 2020. But as you all know, something funny happened in 2020. So we had to reschedule the whole thing and did a smaller conference, an online format in 2021. We are now planning the conference for next year. And stay tuned for the call for papers. It's almost finished. Sergey and also the colleagues from CARP got the preliminary call for papers, but maybe we will work on that call in the next weeks. But you will be informed by us. It would be a pleasure and an honor to have lots of colleagues from the CARP network at our conference in Bamberg in next year. And keep your fingers crossed that COVID-19 will be over, or that we can handle it. Thanks a lot.
Of course, Andre, maybe you can share some of links to your previous books. They've been quite prolific, and they published already 3 books on scandology based on the materials of the conferences. Maybe you can share some links and also the call for paper for your conference, so people from this conference can join you next year in Germany. And we do look forward to developing more kind of research and how character assassination relates to scandals and how we can all learn from each other. Jennifer?
Hello. So you wanted to take a break before we turn things over to Eric? Sorry, this is news to me.
I can continue. I can continue.
I guess we can ask our participants if they need to take a break, or we just can go on.
Throw us a thumbs up using the reactions if you'd like to take just a quick 5-minute break, or obviously you are welcome to excuse yourself whenever, but if you'd like to take a break, give me a thumbs up. All right, seeing a couple people. What do you think, Serge? Should we take a break or should we?
I think we should just go on, because the majority of people would like to continue there. And we're on fire. Come on, let's not stop.
Fair enough, fair enough. Also, I'll say now, just we know that you obviously have things going on in your lives this weekend, and so we're grateful that you join us for as long as you can, but certainly pop in and out whenever you can and join us for as much or as little of the conference as you feel like. Hopefully a lot, because I think we're going to have some really interesting conversations. And I'll just say I'm looking forward to hopefully getting the chance to attend the Scandology conference. So we are grateful to have those collaborators with us here today as well. So thank you to Serge and Martin for giving us a little bit of a progress report on what we've been up to. As Florian had noted in the chat, it seems like we've been busy, but we've only been able to accomplish these things thanks to your collaboration and support and your willingness to share your excellent scholarship with us. As as Serge pointed out, we didn't write most of the handbook, you all did. We just edited it and put it together, and it was truly an honor to get to engage with many of your scholarship and work in that regard as well. And we're excited to hear as well about many of you that are teaching about character assassination and that kind of thing. So I am actually going to turn it back over to our colleague Eric because, as I mentioned, we want to talk a little bit about teaching about character assassination, and the textbook that was released earlier this year. I've been calling it more of a primer because I think it is a useful overview of the topic and all of the different arenas in which we can engage with character assassination. But we did really write it as a textbook designed to help people who are teaching about character assassination. And Eric has put together a syllabus that could guide folks who are seeking to teach a course in character assassination that can be tailored to different academic disciplines. So I am going to mute myself here and turn it over to Eric.
Thank you, Jenny. Just a quick word of appreciation to our fellow scandologists, and tell from distant cousins, I think we are now sisters and brothers. And just supporting, and this is, I think it's, I want to brag about this. It's one of the good examples of academic cooperation, global cooperation, and just we're doing same things, similar things, and we share lots of similar methodologies. And so invite the participants also to pay attention to Scandology Conference coming next year. And well, we follow your example. We will follow your footsteps. We're also just thinking about just having something live. Hopefully next year, but we'll figure out later on. Thank you very much. Well, the textbook, I'll say, yes, this is a academic work. It's for students. It's scholarly work, but also an example of practical application of our studies of character assassination defenses. Because I'll tell you that that's how we work on this. Four scholars, and the common assumption was, well, 4 scholars, you have a bunch of chapters, and you divided your work and you drafted your chapters and submitted to publisher, and then editors will correct you and then publish and stuff. And no, in fact, honestly, we would draft chapters individually, and then, for example, in my case, I will submit my draft of a chapter to the team, and then they will say nothing about my character. They'll say, Eric, you are great. You're wonderful, just you're skilled researcher, excellent, but the chapter is not good. Just change everything, reverse the order, change this and that completely, reorganize, but you are good, you're excellent. And my self-esteem would be through the roof, and I will just sit down next morning and reorganize everything. Thank you for your comments. So we will not insult our characters. We will encourage each other. And that's, again, this is one of unique projects, by the way. It's usually I work with co-authors, and it's mutual insults and frustration every day and every evening. Here, that the team was supportive and pleased. Those of us who will work with us, you'll see how they work, and I'm really appreciative just to the style. Well, maybe that's one of the ideas that we try to promote. That says you can work together and talked about substance, and then we'll maintain our inflated egos. Well, I hope not too inflated. Well, the textbook has everything for everybody, and this is a challenge because you can make happy everybody. Well, historians, specialists in rhetoric, political scientists, sociologists, economists, specialists in English, sociology, economics. How can you satisfy the interests of all people? Difficult, but I think you'll find something interesting for yourself. And so, most importantly, this is factual. I will ask Miriam if she's ready, maybe in a couple of minutes, to take it over and introduce the search database and the search engine for database. And then after that, I will talk about the syllabus. So we believe fine thing to do. One of the features we try to include in the textbook is, yes, there are lots of exercises right there, practical questions, critical thinking questions that will be helpful in your work. You can teach the subject, and then for your convenience, you can assign those questions, and you can change them, you can edit them, you can add your questions, but at least we have templates for those exercises and questions, and standard list of literature sources are available. But also what we suggest is, I think, sort of a unique feature. It's a small feature, it's a unique feature, but it's interesting that you can have a book we made the book searchable through online database. So as a researcher, as a scholar, as a student, as a graduate student, studying cases of character assassination scandals, you can, using keywords, you can just find something interesting in this textbook. And so quickly find the pages, quickly find the citations and resources and references, and this is helpful for in your research. And so, Miriam, if you're available, of course, I thought you are. Just why don't you just take it over and explain by showing the screen how this database works? It's absolutely free. It's on our website. And you can access this and search and get those cases, and Miriam can explain to you just right now.
Of course, yes. Let me just give me one moment here. I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully I am able to, there we go, just do it by tab.
And once again, introduce yourself for those people who just came a little bit late.
Of course. So I am Mariam. I am a former student of Professor Sharaev's, and I'm currently a student of political science at UNC Chapel Hill in North Carolina. So of course, again, hello from North Carolina. And over the past year, I've been doing some personal research on character attacks made against current Vice President Kamala Harris, but also I am the Twitter, I run the Twitter for CARP_lab. So please be tweeting at us again throughout the conference using the hashtag CARP 2021. And I have been also working towards compiling our textbook database, or the data that's featured in the textbook, into kind of an online format. So when you visit our website, underneath of the research portion, there's just a tab that says CARP database. And once you click on that, I already have it pulled up. This screen kind of pops up. And when you scroll down, you have different options of looking at the database. Like Professor Sharaev was talking about, we have a search feature. We also have a full database feature that you can look at on the, and that's embedded onto the website itself. If you want to look at it by chapter, or if you wanted to just kind of find something, or you perhaps didn't know what you were looking for, we have all the data from the textbook correlated here by chapter, of course, as well. If you needed to download it as a PDF to print it out, show students, show colleagues, we also have it available to download as a PDF right here. But the coolest feature, of course, like Professor Sharaev was talking about, is searching the database if you were looking for something in specific. And I'm assuming the screen is still sharing. So if you were perhaps looking for a brief, you would, of course, just like a regular search engine almost, type in brief, and it'll give you every example in the textbook throughout any chapter where it is a brief, the type of character assassination that took place. We also have it sorted by time period. So if you were looking for only 20th century examples, you would go ahead and filter your search for the 20th century, and it'll show you any character assassination or attack attempts that took place in the 20th century. What else? Another thing that's really cool is, let's say you wanted to get more information, you can go ahead and click this, and this will tell you all the information that is also featured in the textbook as well. And it'll allow you to also hone in on the specific example. We are working towards making a larger and more, a database that's more encompassing of more character attacks. And we are open to suggestions, and we are open to examples that you might want to add. Please reach out to us and don't hesitate to do that. And this is available to everyone, again, free. And also it's right on our CARP Research Lab website. So yes, thank you. Let me stop the share here.
Thank you, Miriam. Thank you so much. And I'll just underline that, well, the database was available, but it took enormous effort from you in coding and just learning and checking to make it available. It looks like simple feature, but it's coolest feature, very simple. And I don't think that's many of our colleagues do that, and we offer this as accompany the book. And plus, for those of you who want to just simply check, for example, character attacks against women in 19th century, you enter keywords and you find, well, things from the textbook, of course. We want to see character attacks in Canada, and maybe a few cases, but yes, you can find them easily right there. Of ancient history, to understand keywords, and so you can enter keywords and find answers, and look at the book and just find those examples there. And of course, those of you who can suggest us some key phrases, keywords, please tell us. We can adjust and improve the database. And also, Mariam, thank you. We will and we are working on a larger database, which will be based not only on the textbook, but on the universe of character assassinations in the world. Well, the sample, of course, the sample accessible for us, and we'll make it available also for researchers, for scholars, for those interested in this subject. But this is a long process, and hopefully there will be step-by-step process. We will be talking about our advancement. Yeah. So, and I hope you have questions, and I hope you can check this feature today, and see how it works. It's cool, simple, interesting, and honestly, well, with Mariam, you showed it to me, working. It's like a toy. Whoa! I can just check it and I can see it. Interesting. Okay, how about male? How about female? How about 18th century? How about rumors? And well, it's available. It's available, so it's for you. Please just use it and share with your students and with your colleagues.
Eric, before you talk about the syllabus, I just wanted to add a few words of appreciation to you and to Mariam and to everybody who worked on such an ambitious project, because indeed this is something that is groundbreaking. This is something new that we try to do, and just like I said, I mean, we try to move forward, scholarship and academia by, experimenting and doing different projects, and that's what CARP is all about. A couple of things I wanted to mention in relation to writing the textbook, and maybe Jennifer and Martin can share their experiences. Actually, it's really difficult to write an interdisciplinary book, because we would sometimes not even agree on terminology. When, for example, Eric and I talked about like priming and framing, and I would be talking about it from a communication perspective. Eric would be talking about it from the psychological perspective, and he's like, well, that's what it means. I'm like, no, it's not what it means. I mean, priming is different, and then we'll be just talking for kind of weeks until we kind of like reach consensus. And I'm sure for Martin, it would be kind of completely different experience working with people from social sciences, trying to make sense of how we write and how we do things. So I think it was quite an ambitious project. Now I just realized what a titanic work we did, and I'm really proud of us. I don't know, Jennifer.
I thought it was one of the most fun things I've ever worked on. And one thing I really enjoyed was that we didn't just divide things up and say, okay, Eric will do the political psychology chapters, I will write a few historical chapters, Serge will write some communication chapters, Jenny some rhetorical chapters, but we mixed it all up, and that we said each chapter will get at least 2 primary authors, and then the other 2 are going to go over it as well and add their stuff to it, so that each chapter really became a mix of all our different perspectives and disciplines. And that was very, I learned a lot from that myself. That was a very fun thing to do.
By the end, I don't think anyone even remembered who wrote what chapter or who started.
Yeah. Sometimes it's hard to think, okay, did I contribute to this chapter, or was it the other one? Yeah, it's all a bit mixed up, but that's a good thing.
Sort of shameless self-promotion. I think that the Beatles did that the same way. So well, of course, just composing stuff. Yes, thank you so much. And now the syllabus. 2 things, and let me share the screen. I think I can do this. I'm sorry, just 1 second. This is let me see if I can share the screen. If possible, if I can share the screen with you. I think for some reason I cannot share the screen.
You should be co-host, I think.
Yeah, I think I'm a co-host, but if
He's
possible.
actually not listed as a co-host. So
Oh.
one of you all who is.
Yeah, I
right.
am now.
Excellent.
I'm now right away. And I will share the screen with the syllabus. Not to impose, because it just may appear condescending. Oh, guys, this is the syllabus, and this is what we should use, and not to again insult anyone's intelligence, because you know how to put together a syllabus for your course, but every professor, every instructor knows, and yours truly just one of them, that when you teach a new course, it's always a challenge to have a syllabus. And one of the obstacles, again, I'll share the secret, because we have undergrad students, one of the obstacles why some of us don't teach new courses is, well, it's a syllabus. It takes days and days and days and weeks to put it together. If you want to do a good job, no, maybe next semester. I'll stick to the something I taught for years, and it's easier in certain ways. So this is just a sample, a template. And thanks, Serge, by the way, you did the first for communication studies for sociology, and I basically use your template to suggest a syllabus for political science professors, or in the field of political science, and this will be available for you. Just basically we'll post it, and this is for you, how to use the syllabus. And
where is my money?
Well, we'll discuss this, and certainly, and in some cases, you just to fill in the blanks about the code number and semester year. You know what to do and how to do it. Sorry about this. The course description, basic foundation. You can change. You can change it. I'm sorry about this. You can change it. You can amend it. You can completely delete this section. Depends on your ideas, your strategies. Course objectives. Well, this identify 7. You can make it fewer if you want it. I'm sorry about this. Just for some reason, it's just
that's my bank calling.
Yes,
where is my money?
Exactly. Sorry about this. For some reason, I can't. Yeah, I can. So sorry. Instructional methods, required text. Obviously, well, we designed the syllabus for the text, and this is why we recommend this text, or make it required. And also our reader, basically this handbook for character assassination. This is what is also recommended, and again now in soft cover. And then, well, we put attendance and participation expectations. I understand you have own expectations. At least a template is available. And then my version is what I would do, and you give a template. For example, midterm and 20% of final grade, final paper, discussions and quizzes. This is what I would do, but it definitely can change the percentage. Definitely can put more emphasis on quizzes or papers or assignments. This is again just for, you know, this is what you feel comfortable with and what you feel what you prefer to do. And then the description of assignments. By the way, about quizzes, by November, I'll put it here. We will make available a test bank for faculty. If you teach a class or classes related, please, and now we will make an announcement, make a request, and we will email you, share with you a test bank, multiple choice questions, short answer questions, essay questions for you. You can use it in your classes just as a template, and we'll make it available for faculty. We don't want to post it, but we'll make it available upon request for teaching faculty. We'll accompany the text, of course. And then ideas for the final paper. Serge, I took your ideas, but also give you a sample of what I can do. So for example, this is a brief description, actually detailed description of a final paper. Could be 20%, 30%, depends on your interest and how you assign the percentages. And here I suggest the idea about writing an op-ed. It's for students, and give instructions about what is op-ed is. so that they can use their knowledge and skills to write something which maybe some of them will do in the future, journalists, as historians, as political scientists, as psychologists. Well, it's a column against editorial opinion. So just editorial articles in newspapers on sites, and then against editorials of opinions of experts. And the students, in my experience, I do it for 3 years, love it. So just something practical. So they practice skills to write op-eds for Der Spiegel, for Telegraph, for Guardian, for New York Times, for Washington Post. And yes, who knows, in 2-3 years, they will be writing those op-eds for those editions, Le Figaro or whatever, Humanité. And grading system, it's very standard in the United States. My European colleagues and colleagues in India and other parts of the world maybe has different system, but this is very typical for us. This is nothing new right there. And we have required ideas about academic integrity, accommodations, and grading grievance. Each school has own rules. You can just copy and paste those rules and put it there. And then we have a course schedule. This is easy for you just to assign a chapter. I designed this for typical 15-week course. 3/4 of American universities and colleges use a semester system, which is typical 15, sometimes 16 weeks. About 1/4 uses a quarter system. It's maybe a little bit tricky, especially in the West Coast United States. You can easily adjust to a quarter system right there. If you teach in Europe, sorry about this, you have different requirements, but it's easy to adjust to your requirements. And then literature. Most of it was done by Serge, but I added some political science items right there. And chapter by chapter recommended literature. Some of them have links to online sources. Some of them are printed copy. And there we go. This is a syllabus which we will share, post it for you. You can use it, and so we will not claim authorship. We'll simply share with you. But the samples of questions and test bank, and this is something which will be available upon request from teaching faculty. So we'll make it available for you again through emails. We'll announce this next month about how you can access those questions for your classes. And again, for historians, for professionals in fields of rhetoric, sociologists, psychologists, we will just make distinctions so you can select your questions based on your professional interests. So, Jennifer?
Excellent. Yes, we put this together thinking that we wanted resources for all of our collaborators who might be interested in kind of broadening the reach of our work here and of your work in an easily accessible way to teach this type of stuff. And we know, as Eric mentioned at the beginning, that as we're preparing new classes, time pressures and other types of things often get to us. So we want to help make it easier for folks to engage with our work in the classroom, in addition to in the scholarly and academic journals, because I think fundamentally, I hope that most of you all would agree that one of the great things that studying character assassination can do is help make us all more critical consumers of news and think about the way stories are framed and think about the types of political discourse we hear. And what better way to do that than to pass those types of critical citizenship skills on to our students. We have one more thing that we would like to accomplish this morning while we have you all together, or this evening or afternoon, wherever you are joining us from in the world, and that's to pull together some framing questions for our conversations about both character assassination and cancel culture over the course of the next 2 days. And so Martin is going to introduce those to you, and we are certainly hopeful, welcoming other big questions that you all want to wrestle with this weekend as well. So Martin's going to present those, and then we'll open it up for a brief discussion, and then we will close our conversation this morning and prepare to reconvene with you all tomorrow morning.
Yep, thanks, Jenny. I think you can all see the questions now. There we go. Yes. So yeah, when we were thinking about the topic of this conference, one question that immediately came up is what actually do we mean by cancel culture? And there's many different definitions that you could give of it, and we've very soon agreed that we shouldn't actually try to pinpoint one definition in advance and tell you, well, this is what cancel culture is, or this is what it's going to be about, but rather to leave that open to discussion and to hear what everyone thinks cancel culture actually means, what it should mean, and whether or not you actually think it's a good term to begin with, because the term itself is contentious as well. So a couple of questions we came up with brainstorming about this, and that we can hopefully talk about in the course of this conference is, for one thing, is cancel culture something new? The word is relatively new. We've seen cancel culture making a big impact in recent years, and we associate it with the modern times. We associate it with social media, perhaps. But is cancel culture something that has in some form or other always been with us, or is that really something that was recently invented and doesn't really have any genuine historical parallels? Or is it an offshoot of other forms of social ostracism we've seen throughout history? As an ancient historian, of course, I like that term ostracism because it comes from ancient Athens, where in ancient Athenian democracy, people had ostracisms coming from the word ostraka, which means a potsherd, and everyone was allowed to write the name of the politician they hated the most on a potsherd. And then the guy who got the most votes had to leave town for 10 years. So that's what an ostracism was originally. And of course, now the term in English has taken on a different meaning, but ostracizing someone still means that you want to banish someone from the public sphere in some sense. So is that a sort of cancel culture? Do we have cancel culture in ancient Athens or not? Do we have it in other forms throughout history? Or should we really reserve the term cancel culture just for modern phenomenon that happened in the last 10 years or so? And what about character assassination, that term that we've been throwing around a lot for the past 2 hours? Character assassination as the attacks on the reputation of individuals. Is that a form of canceling someone? Is character assassination synonymous with cancel culture? Are they two very different things? Do they overlap in some sense? We're not completely sure, and that's certainly something that we'd like to discuss with you guys as well. What does it mean to say that you've been cancelled? People like saying that they've been cancelled, and what's the rhetorical impact of claiming to be cancelled? I think in that regard, at least, there is a clear parallel to character assassination in that people always like to cast themselves as the victim of it. I've become the victim of character assassination. I've become the victim of cancel culture. I have been cancelled. You're presenting yourself as the unjust victim of an unjust practice. But is it really? And what does it mean when you position yourself as that victim? You know, is that actually trying to attack cancel culture in itself as a bad thing? Or can it be just in some cases and unjust in others? Are there righteous and unrighteous victims of cancel culture and character assassination? Is it all in the eye of the beholder? Also very interesting things to talk about. And finally, from the perspective of the person or the group doing the canceling, how do you engage in communication techniques so severe that someone actually does get cancelled? So what's the, in Jennifer's words, the rhetorical makeup of a cancellation? How do you go about cancelling someone? And we want to discuss that not because we want to necessarily encourage you to cancel people. That we'll leave that up to you, in fact. But how does it actually work? Is that akin to character assassinating someone? How do you accomplish the cancellation of a person? So that's some of the questions that we came up with and that we can hopefully address in the course of this conference. We already heard many interesting questions from you as well. So how does cancel culture relate to shame, for instance, was a question that was being asked. How does it work to silence people? What is acceptable knowledge? What do we marginalize in our societies? What do we exclude and why do we do so? and many other questions that were already asked by many of you. So I hope we can return to all of those questions in the course of this conference. And with that being said, I'd like to open the floor up to everyone and hear what your initial thoughts on this are.
Excellent. So Martin, I would like maybe to, we still have a few minutes. Maybe we can see if anybody has questions, because
I see Rod has a question or a remark.
Right.
Well, I have a series of kind of observations that I hope that we kind of pursue through the conference. One is that I think that, you know, cancellation is kind of derived from an earlier time where, you know, somebody had been so odious to the community that they end up being banished. But that was at a time that our communities were really small, that, you know, we were engaged in face-to-face interaction and so forth. Today, you know, the banishment gets taken place, you know, in a social media sphere, kind of a virtual world and so forth. And so, and, you know, there is you can kind of coexist on those worlds where you may be, you know, canceled in the social media world, but your real world goes on just fine. But then there are times in which the cancellation is so bad that it ends up affecting your employment, you know, your social relations and so forth. And that's, you know, one of those things that's kind of interesting. And then the other thing is that, you know, there seems to be rules about how you are supposed to act in given situations. And so two examples that are somewhat related. One is there was a contestant on The Bachelor, Rachel. She was on the season that Matt James, who was the first African-American bachelor, was. And she was picked by him, you know, that he was going to kind of go forward with her. The Bachelor ends up wrapping up, you know, taping about 3 months before the final episode airs. And so there's this kind of interregnum. And in that period, it was people on social media discovered that Rachel had, as part of a sorority event, been in an antebellum party in which she, you know, had the whole plantation dress on and so forth. And, you know, people kind of wanted to know, hey, Matt, do you know this? And what's Rachel's reaction? And it turned out to be a whole big thing. And she basically got kind of canceled so much on social media that it ended up breaking, you know, Rachel and Matt apart, although whether or not they're completely apart is another question. Similarly, Ellie Kemper, you know, the unshakable or unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt in The Office, she had gone to a cotillion, I guess, at this business place in St. Louis 20 years ago when she was a teenager. And it turned out that this place 20 years before was when it finally allowed non-whites into it. It actually had been founded by either a friend or a relative of Nathan Forrest at some point in time. So it had been pretty exclusionary. And, you know, she immediately, you know, I don't know if she consulted with, you know, somebody, but he came out with a statement about, hey, I was unaware of this and I'm very, very sorry about all of this and so forth. And, you know, and the controversy lasted about 48 hours. And it seemed to be that in the case of Rachel, she didn't say all of the right things that she needed to say when she needed to say it. And Ellie Kemper did, you know, but, you know, so there's almost like there is a playbook. The problem is that nobody really knows what the playbook is. It's not like you can go to, you know, Rectifying My Reputation for Dummies. And so, so anyway, you know, a couple of things, you know, related to cancel culture. You know, that.
Yeah, perhaps that should be the title of our next project.
Oh, yeah, that kind of leads me to the kind of the follow-up idea on our previous discussion we had 2 years ago on reputation versus reputations as plural. You know, is it just one reputation you're dealing with, or there are multiple reputation in different contexts, and how do you basically manage them all, you know, within the overlap? And there is a master reputation that basically takes toll because of those cancel culture efforts. So yeah, lots of interesting things to discuss. We didn't ask people whether they have questions for Eric when he talked about the textbook database or syllabus. Maybe anyone wants to kind of get a copy of the syllabus, or
we will post it. We'll post it on our website. Yes, we'll post it, make it available.
But yeah, we will probably should put our email in the chat box, so people can send us direct emails if they have follow-up questions and stuff. Okay. So I posted mine, Martin, Eric. Colleagues, do we have any other questions?
Can I
go ahead.
Add one thing that's been on my mind since we're talking about the definition of it, not to propose an answer or like the right definition, but we're mostly talking in our conversation here about cancel culture. And it seems to me that a more similar concept that would be useful for discussing with reference to character assassination techniques or campaigns would be something like, you know, cancellation campaigns or cancellation techniques, or, you know, an initiative related to cancellation, right? So rather than saying culture, because I think if we talk about the culture, I think the whole, you know, there's other issues, right? It's like social dynamics, like people take, at least the way when I hear cancel culture, I think, oh, we're talking about a group that relative to in the past, they now are, they're deploying these techniques more, and people are responding to them such that they have the effect that whoever lobs the attack or whatever keeps using them, right? So that's what I think of when I hear culture. So it just seems to me like we could say cancellation, whatever, attacks or techniques.
Yeah, and
more of a focus on a process rather than a group.
Right. And you're right, April. This is something that we'll be talking about tomorrow, where I will be discussing in my presentation two separate issues. Cancel culture as a social conflict, where we talk about, you know, ongoing conflict based on differences in views about gender, race, other social issues happening in society, or we're talking about the process of cancellation in particular. And that basically comes from the cancel out culture from Twitter, which we'll also discuss tomorrow. But yeah, thanks for pointing this out. This is a very important distinction.
And Serge, maybe I may add something, just if you don't mind. In the textbook, we do argue about the term, saying that this is not really proper term. Just to say it's a culture. If we define culture, just we must suggest that it must be something else. It's most likely it's a practice. It's a mechanism, it's a venue. The question here is that are we in today's world? Are we in a situation when we created norms and expectations that promote this type of ideas that we can cancel somebody? And because of his or her views. If to go to extremes, for example, it's a serial killer. Can we just cancel him? Mostly men, right? Most likely. Can we cancel him completely? Just erase and just make sure that it's just no mentioning about him? Can we cancel somebody who really expresses inappropriate sexist and racist views? Openly, publicly, deliberately. So a very good point. So this is a situation when we become more sensitive to certain issues. And again, Martin and I would argue about a certain cultural sensitivity towards certain issues in certain periods. And there are different. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, society was paying attention to some things, but not to other things. And today we pay attention to the things maybe 5 years ago, 5 years later will not be much interested in. So Serge, thank you. This is something we'll definitely need to discuss, and I will discuss it myself in my presentation.
That's important, and we will have a couple of people from other countries, like for example in Russia, talking about why people in Russia, politicians, don't get canceled for the things politicians get canceled in the United States, right? And that's important, this cross-cultural distinction, which we really need to discuss, which again goes back to my argument that, but this is a really a socio-cultural phenomenon we're dealing with here right now. Talking about cancel culture as a phenomenon that we have to look at and dissect and to understand what's inside of it.
Yeah, I see 2 raised hands. Rod, would you like to respond to that?
Well, just in the, it dawned on me that we're in the process of a country of taking away monuments that were related to Confederate history. Or in the case of Yale University, there used to be a residential college, John C. Calhoun College, and it's been renamed to the Grace Hopper College. When we do that, are we actually canceling history? And when we get rid of these things, and what's the implications if we are canceling history?
Yep. It's very interesting question for historians as well.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Controversial past.
And speaking of Russia, there are monuments dedicated to Russian emperors who presided and sponsored the oppressive system of serfdom, which is slavery, essentially. And then there's still the monuments are there, and they're glorified, and wreaths are being laid there. People put flowers right there. And yet those emperors were sponsoring the most inhumane system of serfdom known to humankind for so many years, which was over only by 1861 in Russia. It's essential slavery. When you can buy and sell human beings, that's a slavery in my books.
Well, and Eric, back to your point, actually, somebody make a good observation that cancel culture already happened in Russia in 1917 when those people were already removed, but then 70 years later, they were resurrected and built again. So in other words, so the history made this cycle, and now we have these emperors and tsars back in monuments and statues.
I guess you could call the French Revolution a severe case of cancel culture as well. Athanasios, you also have your hand raised.
Actually, the past has to be re-narrated in order to settle accounts in the present and strategic goals while we are defining the society. However, I would like to ask you, Eric, do you believe that the cancel culture is related with the... for one moment, I forget it.
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Character assassination with... sorry, I forget the word in English now. Give me one moment.
Okay, we can get back to you in a second if you think of it.
We can get back to you, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. In the meantime, could I perhaps say something about a remark that Spencer made in the chat that is also very interesting, namely that there can also be obvious prejudices for those that create cancel culture campaigns, with the example of Sarah Silverman being taken to task for a blackface performance while Robert Downey Jr. wasn't. There's an interesting paradox in that, I think, because, of course, often cancel culture is also about people who are in a less privileged position, actually taking to task people who are in a more privileged position and think they can say just about anything and get away with it, and then making sure that in the future they can't, because they are called out on their racism or biases or whatever it is. But it can indeed also be used the opposite way around. It can be used specifically to target women or minorities or anyone you happen not to like. So it can be a double-edged sword, I guess, cancel culture, and that's an interesting idea.
Right, Martin, and then the question is, I mean, who has the right to do the canceling?
Yeah.
And is that so who has enough resources and power and support to do the canceling, and not why the other way around, right?
Yep.
And that goes back to the whole kind of concept of power struggle and contestation that we talked about before.
So Athanasios, let's get back to you.
Yes. Actually, I'm curious about the relation of with the spiral of silence effect. And particularly the resurrection of the spiral of silence effect within the ecology of social media. And what is the relation of this process with the cancel culture strategy? Because the two might have a very strong interaction.
I can quickly say just for those of you who are not proficient in psychology, sociology, a spiral of silencing is a phenomenon that been established empirically, which suggests that when a certain point of view is not expressed as often as others, so the tendency is that people express it less and less and fewer times, and finally just become instinct. Like as we have a group of 100 people, and 80% of them have extreme libertarian views and 20% have conservative views. And then just because of a libertarian views expressed most of the times, 20% of conservative individuals will express the views fewer and fewer times. And finally, this point of view will be silenced. So it's a spiral of silence. I think this is a very good point, because today with echo chambers, and Serge, correct me if I'm wrong, because communication just feel that's when most of us looks like we are entering our convenience chambers, the websites, networks, and streaming channels with which we feel comfortable. And so we hear the news which confirm our views, we express our opinions which are endorsed with likes with other people opinions, and then we find that we live in a separate worlds, which is so easy to do these days because we can click on the button and just go there. And essentially, it's a natural spiral of silencing that people get surprised. That's, oh, there are other points of views exist, and I didn't know about them. And in fact, there are different points of view. And so that's what, again, I think is a valid question, because the spiral of silencing today is a natural phenomenon because of our adherence.
Strategically, when we are doing canceling someone, you are making him silent. So all the other people like-minded are silencing. So spiral of silence is not media imposed. It's imposed by social media action, by people who are operationalizing with using character assassination technique within the cancel culture framework in order to operationalize a spiral of silence. And that's the position. Thank you.
Right. So just to add what Eric has mentioned, in fact, actually, it's a very useful concept here. And yeah, I just posted this famous study from 2014 from Pew Research Center on that, when they had this debate about whether Edward Snowden is a hero or a traitor. And those people who thought that Edward Snowden is a kind of a hero were less likely to express their opinion if they felt like they're in the minority, simply because of the fear of being isolated or ostracized by their peers. And that's why it kind of goes back to the point that when people feel they're a minority on social media, they're more likely to self-censor themselves, in a sense. And that goes back to the question of, in those campaigns, are people just muted, or they just engage in voluntary self-censorship because of the fear of social isolation, in a sense. But yeah, it's a really useful concept here, which we need to explore more, obviously. And obviously, Elizabeth Noel Neumann, who was a famous American sociologist. She was also a German sociologist in 1930s and 40s, in 1940s, in fact, because she was too young in the 30s, which had quite a controversial biography. But then coming to America, she really developed a lot of useful sociological concepts.
Yeah, Rod?
Yeah, I was just going to piggyback on the spiral of silence. That, in essence, that's what conservatives are talking about in terms of higher education, that conservative students, because higher education is dominated by all these Marxists and so forth, that they don't end up expressing their opinions in the classroom, because Spiral of Silence will say that, you know, people are so afraid of social isolation, they don't want to be, you know, ostracized, and so they keep their viewpoints to themselves. And then what happens is you just end up hearing liberal, you know, propaganda in the classroom by both teachers and students. And so it's not really true, but that's the argument that they make about attacking higher education.
Yep.
Any other comments or questions before we wrap up today's discussion, and we will get ready for our wonderful tomorrow's kickoff of the event. So just to remind you, we're going to have an opening panel. 4 of us will be discussing cancel culture from our perspectives. Martin will be talking about cancel culture from the historical perspective. Jennifer will be using a rhetorical approach. Eric will be discussing the psychology, political psychology of cancel culture. And I'll try to make sense, if I can see the connection from the communication perspective, or mostly social constructionist perspective of cancel culture, and see how that works out. So, and then we have a wonderful keynote speaker from the Pew Research Center, who basically published just a couple of wonderful studies on cancel culture, which we're going to refer to. One of them is arguing whether cancel culture is a form of punishment, or whether it's about social accountability and social justice. And I think it's one of those important questions we have to debate. And I would like to find at least a few answers to questions I had before this conference. Martin, Eric.
Yep, I don't have anything to add, actually. I'm just looking around if anyone else would like to say something or has a final thought or question before we wrap up for today.
Certainly. So I second that. Once again, we use our emails, or well, any forms of communication. Emails are fine. I think we just published them right there. To talk to us, and essentially, well, any ideas, any thoughts, and talking points will be more than welcome today, and of course tomorrow, and also on Sunday.
So I would like to add, I really appreciate your support. I'm really happy to see all these wonderful people here, colleagues, friends, practitioners, scholars. I think it's really important for us to kind of talk about this issue and put it in a multidisciplinary perspective, so we can really at least learn more about the social phenomenon, as most people out there discussing it. And of course, I would appreciate if you could spread the word about our small community, tell people about CARP, share our Twitter account, go check our YouTube channel, our podcasting sessions, recommend our books to your libraries, and yeah, stay in touch. So we look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Yep, see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, everyone.